The historicity of the Hebrew Patriarchs. Historians have debated whether the Hebrew Patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, were real historical figures for decades. While there are those who say archaeological discoveries and historical records do prove that the patriarchs existed, others claim that this evidence only reveals that the Israelites of later generations created the stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph to serve as semi-legendary or completely fictional founders of their kingdom and religion. It is difficult to date the events of the book of Genesis because there are only a few references to public events, and none of them connect to events recorded in the general timeline of civilization. Outside of the Bible, there are no references to places such as the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar, or people such as King Chedorlaomer of Elam, King Melchizedek of Salem, or King Abimelech of Gerar. Not even the two Egyptian pharaohs from the book of Genesis, the one who ruled during the lifetime of Abraham and the one ruling during the lifetime of Joseph, can be properly identified because of the biblical author's decision not to record their names. If one accepts the lifespans and dates recorded in the biblical narrative as true, a timeline can be established that dates the patriarchal age to 2091 to 1876 BC. However, it's problematic to use this timeline because of the impossibly long lifespan of the patriarchs, inconsistent dating used in the Bible, and no connection to recorded history or archaeological evidence. Genealogies in the book of Genesis also tend to serve as origin stories of Israel and their neighboring nations instead of reliably mapped out family ancestry. For example, the Ishmaelites, or the Arabs, are said to be the descendants of Ishmael, the son of Abraham and his Egyptian slave Hagar. Historians such as William F. Albright and Ephraim A. Spencer theorize that the stories of the patriarchs were composed during the time of the United Kingdom around the 10th century BC, but are based on historical facts that date to the time of the patriarchs. Evidence that support their claims include the names of the patriarchs corresponding to the names used during the second millennium BC, the Nuzi archive tablets reflecting social practices that are like those used by the Hebrews, and the legal codes of the Babylonians and Assyrians that seem to justify the actions made by some of the main characters. However, the archaeological evidence doesn't provide a conclusive answer, but there is a kernel of truth to the historical accuracy of the Israelites' origin stories. There are some historians who theorize that the patriarchs are not only fictional, but were created by biblical writers who lived during the 10th century BC, so that the Israelites could have an origin story. The children of Israel are made up of 12 tribes that trace their origin to the sons of the patriarch Jacob. Prior to the formation of the Davidic dynasty, around 1000 BC, the stories of the patriarchs most likely didn't exist until the nation of Israel was established. By having stories about great ancestors that existed long before the formation of the United Kingdom, the Israelites had a connection to an ancient tradition that held a greater narrative. The Hebrew patriarch with the most credible historical background is Joseph. Joseph's name is assumed to be a shortened form of Joseph El, which means may El increase, a name that is possibly a personal name or a name connected to a tribe or geographic region. The emergence of the house of Joseph in the Manasseh-Ephraim region of Israel around 1000 BC may reflect the existence of a tribal hero that the people of that region used as a unifying founder. If the patriarchs lived during the Middle Bronze Age, which was 2000 to 1550 BC, as some scholars have proposed, this would place Joseph during the Hyksos period of Egyptian history, which occurred between circa 1675 to circa 1552 BC. During the Hyksos period, a Semitic group invaded northern Egypt and established two dynasties that ruled from their capital city of Avaris. Although the background of Joseph's story is based on historical facts from this era of Egyptian history, the story itself is structured more like a historical romance than a non-fiction account. Furthermore, the author or authors of Joseph's story also seem to have a limited amount of knowledge on Egyptian history and culture, and the knowledge that he or they possessed reflects Egypt at a later date. For example, the area of land Joseph's family lives is called the land of Ramesses. This is a reference to Pharaoh Ramses II, an Egyptian ruler who lived long after the Hyksos period and Joseph's speculated lifetime. However, the minor details that appear in Joseph's story does reflect a strong Egyptian influence that makes it possible that the story is based on real events. Joseph's Egyptian wife, Asenath, bears a commonly used Egyptian name that dates to the 2nd and 5th millennium BC, and his father-in-law's name, Potiphar, is recorded on an Egyptian stela from the 21st dynasty, which occurred during circa 1069 to 945 BC. From the Middle Kingdom to the Roman period of Egyptian history, there is evidence that individuals of Syrian and Canaanite ethnicity held high offices in the Egyptian government. This does make it possible for someone like Joseph to come to Egypt as a foreigner and become a high-ranking political officer.